I want to thank Stephanie Bailey and the Blue Outpost Texas Democrats organization for the work that you all are putting into the most important series of elections of our lifetimes, highlighting these critically important state house races, where for the first time in 20 years we have a chance to win a majority in the state legislature, is critical not only for getting back control of our state government and dismantling the infrastructure of voter suppression and voter intimidation and moving forward on the big things that we want to do for our fellow Texans. But it's also going to help us up ballot, whether they are the congressional races that we want to hold on to Democratic seats or the congressional races where we can flip a Republican seat into Democratic control, or defeating John Cornyn, Donald Trump's single greatest enabler in the United States Senate, and sending in his place MJ Hagar, who will represent us in a way that we can be proud of. Or this, Texas has a chance for the first time in 44 years, since 1976, to send our electoral college votes to the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, and defeat Donald Trump, and thereby turn the page on Trumpism and begin the next necessary new chapter for this state and for our country. Texas has the chance to come through big time for America. And that fight is being led by these courageous state house candidates who are doing everything they can at this critical moment of truth. Thank you for highlighting them. Thank you for elevating the importance of these races. And thank you for the work that you're doing between now and November 3rd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blue Outpost Texas Democrats Candidate Forum, where we're showing off our fabulous House candidates with just a few weeks left. Mike Collier here kicking things off. Many of us know each other. I was the 2018 Lieutenant Governor nominee, came real close to winning. I'm not on the ballot now, but I'm in the fight, and this is a very exciting time for us. So we have people here tonight, not just from Texas, but from other parts of the country. And we know in Texas that folks are watching very carefully to see what happens here. I believe that of the states that are considered Republican, Texas will be the first to flip. Why? Because Texas is full of Texans, and Texans are a very progressive people, and we always have been. The only thing that went wrong is redistricting, and the Republicans got a hold of it, and they hang on to it, but they're losing their grip. You cannot change the course of a mighty river. Texans have energy and enthusiasm, and we're progressive and awfully good people, which is why candidates who are awfully good people are going to win. And this is a very, very exciting time for us. And this is the third or fourth in a series. We've been showing off the candidates that we're so proud of on the very cusp of taking control of the Texas House, which we ought to. And when we do, so many good things follow from that. Where do you start? Gerrymandering. Let's start right there. We Democrats will have a very strong hand in how we redraw the districts in the state. That will change everything, not just for our state, but for the rest of the country. Because then people will see big old Texas has become politically competitive all of a sudden. Look what wonderful candidates are turning up. Look at the high quality campaigns that they're running. Look at the fine decisions that they're making, and living compassion in public policy, which we've got in our hearts, and Texans have in all of our hearts. And all we have to do is win, Democrats, and then our state will begin to live and show that compassion. And so this is a really exciting time, and we have fabulous candidates. I'm just delighted to be part of this, and you're going to meet a couple of them, very strong, and give them money, will you? That's such a big part of this. You'll like them, and please write some checks and help them along. We only have a few weeks left. I want to pivot, and I want to thank the folks that have sponsored this, because without them, we couldn't have this program, and I'm just so proud, and I'm going to read them off to you. Sponsors: 312th Family District Court Judge Clinton Chipwells, thank you very much. 270th Civil District Court Judge Deidre Davis. Club sponsors: Bayou Blue Democrats, Meyerland Area Democrats, Texas Democratic Women Harris County Chapter, Houston Stonewall Young Democrats, Southwest Democrats, Cy-Fair Area Democrats, Humble Area Democrats, Democratic Club of the Woodlands, the Energy and Environmental Democrats, Road Women, Cypress Tomball Democrats, Kingwood Area Democrats, where I'm coming to you from, the Spring Democratic Club. Our royal sponsors: former County Clerk Diane Troutman, thank you, Diane, Carl Jones, and Humble Area Democrat President John Carter. Our Sapphire sponsors, Texas Senate District 3 Committeewoman Shirley Layton. Thank you, Shirley. Texas Senate District 7 Democrats and Attorney Mark Whitehead. Mark, thank you. And then our organizational sponsors, Powered by People, Harris County Democratic Party, Flip the Texas House, Sisters United Alliance, Swing Left Texas, Indivisible Texas, and the Blue Action Democrats. So to our sponsors, thank you so much for making this possible. For our candidates, thank you so much for running. This is such an exciting time for all of the Texans that are watching and all the folks outside of Texas that are watching and helping and cheering us on. Thank you so much. With your energy and enthusiasm, how can we not win? We will win. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to turn it over to our host who will lead us through the conversation, the one and only Carly Mosier. Carly?
Hey, Mike. Thank you so much for that introduction. You are always such a rabble rouser when it comes to the Democratic Party. I cannot thank you enough for being involved in these important forums.
Well, thank you. Thank
We'll see
you.
you next time.
And have a good forum. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mike. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. We are so glad to have another night of our Blue Outpost Texas forums where we are targeting the 17 most flippable Texas House seats. And tonight we will have two of those candidates from Tarrant County. We're very excited about it. We wanted to let you know that there's more than just meeting the candidates here tonight. We want you to use this opportunity to give $17 to represent those 17 most flippable Texas House seats to each of these candidates. We also want you to go to their website and sign up for shifts to phone bank, text bank, write postcards, make lit drops, anything to help these candidates get out the vote. And we will continue to ask you throughout the night to go to our Facebook Live and in the comments, ask questions. The last half hour of our evening will be dedicated to asking your questions specifically to these candidates, and we're very, very, very excited. So we will basically start now, if y'all don't mind. I'm so glad to have you here tonight. First, I want to welcome Dr. Lydia Bean.
Hello.
Hi, and I would also like to welcome from Tarrant County, Jeff Whitfield.
Howdy, everybody.
Hey, I'm so glad y'all could join us. Thank you so much. Well, welcome, and I'm going to give you each 1 minute to introduce yourselves to our audience at home, wherever that may be, hopefully nationwide. So we'll start with Dr. Bean.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lydia Bean. I'm a community leader, a small business owner, and a new mom. I just had my first child in May, and I'm running to represent District 93 in Tarrant County. I come from a family of preachers and public school teachers, so I was raised with the values of public service and public education. And I was inspired by that upbringing to found a nonprofit that organizes faith communities, so churches, mosques, and synagogues, to work together for social change and policy change in the community. And we worked on things like fighting payday lending, getting more funding for pre-kindergarten, reforming the bail system, getting more people access to healthcare and paid sick time. And in the process of doing that work, I learned that one of the main obstacles to all the good things we wanted to do was our very own state representative, who was very extreme and out of step with the people who lived in my district. So I was inspired to run because I realized that to get the change we wanted to see for our state, we were going to have to get a new state representative. And I hope to be that person, to be a champion for our community and help achieve all those policy goals that I worked on in the community and be a person on the inside who could champion those policy goals in Austin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bean. That was great. And Jeff Whitfield, 1 minute to you.
Well, howdy, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Jeff Whitfield, and I am our candidate for House District 92 here in the mid-cities of Tarrant County. I know this community well. I grew up here. My dad worked in manufacturing for golf equipment. My mom was a hairdresser right here in the cities, and I'm a product of our public schools, one of our public school systems. It was my neighbors, my teachers, my church who really inspired me to a lifetime of service, even as a kid. And that started out at the United States Air Force Academy. So I was honored to serve our country after my time at the Academy in the Air Force, and went on and worked trained as a lawyer and then worked at a war crimes tribunal over in the Netherlands, and then came home where my wife and I, so we could raise our boy. And it was those same teachers and neighbors that said to me, we got a pretty terrible state representative. We need somebody who can beat him. And I'm in this race because the folks me become what I am, need me to help them get the representation they deserve. So I'm proud to be with you tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. That was wonderful. I really appreciate both of you being here tonight. Now, as I said, throughout the evening, oh my gosh, there's the new very cute. A new Democrat in Texas.
Yes, we got to have our own. We got to pick more voters.
Look at that smile, too.
That's a big vote getter right there. I'm telling you.
Hey, I can't get up there and kiss babies, so I just got to kiss this one instead.
Right? Cute enough baby. Cute enough baby. Definitely kissing babies right there. That's adorable. Welcome, baby. Welcome, baby Democrat. We're very happy to have y'all. And so I will continue throughout tonight. You will see at the bottom of your screen a banner scrolling across with these lovely candidates, their names, their websites, their social channels, all the things, all the info that you need to donate $17 to each of these candidates at least. As Dr. Eliz Markowitz said, $17 or $17,000, whatever you like. It's great. So give a little bit of money to these candidates. Give a little bit of your time. Phone banking, text banking, writing postcards, doing lit drops for them. Usually socially distanced with masks. We're very safe and healthy. So we are going to start tonight with a lightning round question. Several. These will be very quick and easy 1-2 word answers, nothing crazy. And it's a little fun just to help us get to know you. And so I will start with, since Dr. Bean was the first to introduce herself, we will start with Jeff. Jeff, who was your opponent?
My opponent's Jeff Kaysen, the bad Jeff.
The not good Jeff. The what is it? Jerry Seinfeld says the alternate, or Superman, the alternate universe. Yeah, there you go. Bizarro Jeff. There you go. Dr. Bean, who is your opponent?
His name is Matt Krause.
Okay, good. Easy start with the questions. Sweet. No problems. All right, second question. How long have you lived in your district, Dr. Bean?
I've lived in my district since 2013.
Great. And Jeff?
Well, you heard her up here in this part of Tarrant County. Military service took me across the country and around the world. So I've only been back. I've been in the district for about the last year, a little bit longer than a year.
Thank you for your service. Appreciate you. I also have service members in my family. I know it's quite a sacrifice, and we certainly appreciate the example that you're leading for all of our Texans. Okay. Next super easy question. Have you ever been elected before? Jeff Whitfield.
I've not. Haven't run.
And Dr. Bean?
Nope. I've always worked on the other side of the table in the community, going out and advocating with the elected officials.
That's great. So then have you ever run for this position specifically before, Dr. Bean?
I have not. My mom, however, ran for this seat in 2016 and 2018. Before it was considered competitive, because we thought it was really important for us not to let that seat go uncontested, because our rep was just so out of step with our values, and we believe the values of Tarrant County as a whole.
That's how you do it. That's great. Family legacy. I love that. Jeff Whitfield, same to you. Have you ever run for this office?
I have not.
All right. Okay, this is a fun one. I really like this question a lot, and it tells a lot about how you know your own community. Jeff, so when President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris come to visit your district next spring, where are you going to take them to lunch?
To lunch? If they'd come with me, I'd go down here to the elementary school community. They got a great cafeteria, and those kids would love to see us. But if they won't let us in because of that, then I'd take them probably to Wood and Grain Bistro, which is a small little family-owned restaurant in Bedford.
Love it. And Dr. Bean, same question.
I think I would take them to Southern Recipes Grill. It's just a little mom and pop, greasy spoon diner just around the corner from my house. And that's just always our go-to for out-of-town guests. That's
perfect. I love that most of our answers end up being a family-owned restaurant or some hole in the wall or barbecue or Mexican food. It's always, very connected Texan thing. I love the answers that I get to
The
hear.
spoons are not greasy. I'm probably going to get an angry text from the owner pretty soon. The spoons are never greasy. They're always
The
polished and
greasy
shiny.
spoons are the best places in Texas, I have to say. I always, and yes, they're never greasy, but we know what you're talking about. All right. So I would like to know, who is your political hero, Dr. Bean?
My political hero is Elizabeth Warren. Like me, she has a background in teaching in public schools, but she also taught in higher education. And she's just such a champion for working families, and I just look up to her so much.
Great. Jeff Whitfield, same question.
I would say Franklin Roosevelt. I mean, his example of suffering so much as a child and as a young man, and through that suffering, learning empathy and just being at the right place at the right time when not only our community, our country, or our world, an empathetic leader. And we all know the heritage, the record that he left behind.
I love that. So Jeff, we are a party full of readers. We like to read all things, all manner of things. So I want to know, what book would you recommend to our audience?
Well, I mean, this is probably one everybody's read before, but if you've only seen the movies, you've got to read Harry Potter. I'm reading it to my 7-year-old. It's fantastic. Even it's like bringing back something from my past. It's a wonderful story.
That's great. And Dr. Bean, thoughts?
Oh, geez. I'm looking up at my library and I'm just so overwhelmed. I've been wanting to read, oh, geez. This is so overwhelming.
So many books.
From some
so many books.
when you're a learned person and you just have all of these books you're reading.
One book that comes to mind that I really enjoyed, it's called Why David Sometimes Wins. It's written by one of my mentors, Marshall Gans, and it's about the United Farm Workers and how they were able to prevail through scrappiness and resourcefulness. And I always think that's kind of my inspiration. I always think of that book, the lessons of that book when we're up against, difficult odds, as we often are in Texas.
I love that. Both of those answers are great. Remember, now is the time. Visit their website. $17 to these two candidates, $17 to every candidate that we're interviewing through our series of forums here at Blue Outpost, Texas. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can find their social channels at the bottom of the screen throughout the night. Do not forget to ask questions that you want these wonderful candidates to answer in the live comments, and we will get to them in the 8 to 8:30 half hour. We're very excited about that portion. But mostly, we need your money and your time. No campaign can be run without money and people, and they need you. And so do we. So please, donate, donate, donate. Okay, we're going to move on. We've gotten through the very easy part. We're going to start with a section of philosophical questions. These are generally questions that give us a little bit into the mindset of how you get to the decisions that you want to make, right? We don't always get these opportunities to have our questions answered like this with candidates. So I think we will start with Jeff Whitfield. The first question is, what do you think is the responsibility of journalists and online activists in spreading information?
Let me say, too, before I answer, I think my internet signal may be a little spotty. Forgive me. We have terrible internet issues. So if I break up, my apologies to you and to the listeners.
This is the most 2020 thing that could happen. Don't worry about it.
Journalists are literally the fourth estate of our government. I mean, it is essential that we have a free and fair press that diligently looks into, investigates, and reports what's happening. If you do not have a healthy press, you do not have a healthy democracy. So it is essential. And likewise, activists, people who are willing to engage in the process. We often talk about what our constitutional rights are. I would say that it is our constitutional responsibility to engage. I mean, we know that the Constitution talks about all sorts of things we have a duty to do, and certainly engaging, being active in the political process is one of those responsibilities. So I'd say there were really foundations to what it means to be an American.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Dr. Lydia Bean?
What I'd add to what Jeff said so eloquently is that the media has an obligation to seek truth and report facts. I think, and that is what it means to be unbiased. I think one of the problems we've run into in the age of Trump and this kind of alternative reality we're living in is that there was this idea that you had to report both sides rather than seeking truth and reporting the facts, that there is objective reality. And,
Right.
you know, with the terrible person, this dangerous, unhinged person and administration we have in the White House, you know, you can't just say, oh, one side says that we really need to, you know, mask up and follow the advice of epidemiologists and public health experts. The other side says you should maybe drink bleach. Who's right? You decide. I mean, you kill people that way, right? You lose your democracy that way. So if there's one thing we've seen is that it's important to seek truth, and it's bigger than any one political party or ideology. And if we don't seek truth and facts, we're going to run into a lot of problems, and you know, people pay with their lives.
I appreciate
Amen.
that. Yeah, those are both right on the money. Okay, our next philosophical question. This is an interesting question because it's not something that your average voter thinks about often. When do you decide when to lower, raise, or keep taxes the same? So Dr. Lydia Bean, I will start with you.
Yeah, I think it has to come down to what we need to accomplish as a society. And we want to do what we do as efficiently as possible, use taxpayer dollars as efficiently as possible. And then, you know, have a really thoughtful public conversation about what it is we want to accomplish together as a society to live together. You know, it's taxes are the rent we pay to live in a civilization. And so I don't think there's I don't think there's any one right answer to that, but it comes down to nothing. There's no free lunch. We don't get, you know, services and roads and bridges and schools and fire departments for free. So I think we have to be grown-ups and just decide what it is we want to pay for, what it is we value.
Love that. Jeff Whitfield, to you.
Yeah, and I'd echo a lot about what Lydia said. I mean, that idea that we have to be efficient with resources. For those of us that get elected to serve, this is a sacred trust for us to care for the limited revenue that our neighbors give to us to use for the most essential things in our society. So I can tell you, we will not be people that use those resources wastefully, but we'll listen first to our neighbors, understand what is essential to them, and then that everyone is paying their fair share so that we can provide the things that allow our businesses to succeed, allow our next generation to the entrepreneurs of the future and the great citizens. So I think, you know, you have to be in the process and be listening to know whether there's a need for more revenue and when it's right to spend that revenue.
Absolutely. Thank you. So in that same vein, Jeff, how do you prioritize where to spend these taxes?
Well, again, I often say that it's interesting to be running for office because we're often required to speak. But in reality, what we should do mostly, and I know this is what Lydia does, I know it's the same thing I try to do, and that's listen. We want to represent our community, so we have to listen to what their needs are and to understand what the needs of the community are. We're simply your representatives, and we want to represent you. So I would say that it's sort of like triaging. You know, when I was in the military, I'm thinking about a first aid situation. You triage what your situation is, where the greatest need is, and you put the focus there. So there are clearly some crises that we face, and the path to a solution to that crisis is going to require some form of spending. So I think you start with, just like you would triage, you start with the crises and spend the revenue that is required based upon what the experts get to a place we need. And then you move to the next most critical issue, and then the next and the next. I think that's how I mentally would process it.
Thank you. Dr. Lydia Bean, same question.
Budgets are moral documents. You tell me what we spend our money on as a state, and I'll tell you what we as Texans value. So when I look at what we spend our money on, it's just what comes first. For me, children and families comes first. That's ultimately what my goal is. I believe we need to invest in the future of the state of Texas. And that means making sure that Texas is the best place in the country to raise a family and is the best place to be a kid and to grow up to, have a successful transition to the workforce, to family life, to citizenship. And how we accomplish that, I mean, that's ultimately where we want to spend our money.
Yes. A budget is a moral document. That kind of says it all there. I appreciate both of you speaking about listening to your constituents. That's really, it seems like something that is missing from the political sphere often, and especially with the current representation in our Texas House. So I really appreciate both of you being open to listening to your constituents, because that's really important. We have one more philosophical question, but before I get to that, do not forget, please put your questions for our lovely candidates in the comments. We will get to them. We have a behind the scenes crew that is working feverishly to get me those questions. We already have several coming in. We want more. They're all great, and they really address things that are concerning our fellow Texans every day. So our last philosophical question is a fun one. Michelle Obama says, when they go low, we go high. Do you agree? Dr. Bean.
I agree. And the reason is one of the greatest damage from the Trump administration, I think, is to our values as a society, what's being modeled to kids. I worry about kids who are growing up thinking that what it means to be a strong leader is to be a bully, to be cruel, to be dishonest, to flout the law that crime pays. And I think we have to not just win at all costs, but just model the kind of country we want and how we want to be there and what we believe is different. So that's why I'm really excited to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, because I think they model those values. And I really hope to be that kind of leader as well.
Love that. Jeff Whitfield, same question.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I think that we should be concerned that when you look at public opinion polls, they believe that politicians or elected officials are some of the least trusted in society. And what's sad is that those of us that are in doing this kind of thing, we're just seeking to serve. We're just seeking to serve our community. The same way teachers go and serve, the same way that our first responders go and serve, the same way that people in the military. And I think in no small part, maybe that distaste of politics is the lack of civility, the lack of empathy, the lack of just humanity that too many politicians have shown. So we run on our policies and on our empathy for our neighbors, and they show that they shouldn't lead by their actions. We show that we should lead by our actions.
Those are great answers to what always proves to be a fairly easy question for everybody, but your answers are very genuine, and I appreciate that. I really do. Again, go to Blue Outpost Texas, put those questions in the comments, give these lovely candidates $17 at least for the 17 most flippable house seats. And what do we mean by flippable? Every candidate that we are interviewing over the next couple of weeks and prior to this, they are within a 10-point margin of flipping their seat that they're running for. In one case, we had a seat that was lost by 47 votes right here in Fort Bend County. So these seats are imperative, and given that we have redistricting coming up, they're particularly important. So please give them your time and your money. Get them to the Texas State House, please, please, please. Okay, so we're going to move on to some state issue questions. These are questions that pretty much anybody would ask you about government, and I think that you will have an easy time answering. We're going to give you a minute to do each question. Going into November, this issue trends as the number one issue on the minds of voters everywhere. So, how do we get the most healthcare to the most citizens, given our resources? Jeff Whitfield, you first.
I'll tell you that the very first thing we need to do is we need to accept back the billions of dollars that we've given to the federal government, take it back so that we can expand Medicaid here in Texas. We can expand that access to affordable, quality health care that our citizens will get through Medicaid. We have the highest level of uninsured folks of anybody in the country, and a massive number of those are poor kids. And it is just absolutely shameful that Republicans leadership, positions of ideology, have refused to expand Medicaid. And so, first step, absolutely, we've got to expand Medicaid and take care of those. And then beyond that, there's a lot of places we can look for efficiencies in our healthcare system. We can listen to the medical professionals for guidance on where we can find efficiencies to bring down the costs and find a way that Texas is no longer a place that we have so many people whose only hope of healthcare is by rushing to a county hospital or an emergency room, and then we as taxpayers are going to bring, out of skew healthcare costs because the system is so broken. So, first step there.
Thank you. And Dr. Lydia Bean, same question.
I agree with Jeff. The biggest thing we can do is expand Medicaid in Texas and accept those federal dollars, which, as Jeff mentioned, that's our money. We're sending it to DC. We should bring it back to spend it on Texas. And it's the single largest thing anyone can do, really, to cover a bunch of new Americans at one go. So it's over 1 million Americans in Texas who could have health insurance if we would just expand Medicaid. And it's important to me because I've had people in my own family who have been, uninsured during periods of their life, but they're working a job that doesn't carry it, but they still couldn't afford to buy it through the marketplace because we didn't expand Medicaid. That means there's a donut hole. People who make too much to be on Medicaid, but they don't make enough to qualify for the subsidies to buy it on the insurance marketplace. And that's just immoral. For example, my own aunt is a survivor of stage 4 colon cancer. We would have caught it early if she had been consistently covered. But because of the failure to expand Medicaid, she's one of the many people across Texas and mostly southern states who are not being covered. And that's just immoral. I mean, there are people dying every day because of that failure. And it's not just the right thing to do. It's good business. We would create over 327,000 new jobs over 10 years if we expand Medicaid. So a lot of those in the healthcare field. So that's more nurses, more doctors, more hospitals, more clinics that would be available to us all. And I can't tell you, in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic, how important it is for everyone to have coverage. It affects us all, even if you have good insurance yourself.
We have a huge gig worker economy here because we have so many artists and we have so many people that are just having to work multiple jobs. And your point is absolutely 100% correct. Jeff, I think we lost your video, but hopefully we haven't lost your audio.
I'm going to try to get to a place where a slightly stronger internet connection. So I'm still listening to you.
Okay, great. I can still hear you, so that's fantastic.
It's cool, guys. I know Jeff for a long time. He sometimes takes the form of a pulsating white orb. No big. Don't be afraid.
It's all energy, right? I appreciate that. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next question. This is Texas after all. So, Dr. Lydia Bean, tell me, what does comprehensive gun reform policy look like to you?
There's so much we can do to make our families safer while respecting the rights of law-abiding gun owners. One of them is closing the loopholes in background checks. So a lot of people don't know this, but there's so many ways you can not have to go through a background check if you buy a gun online or at a gun show. And so obviously, if you're going to buy a gun with nefarious purposes, there's so many ways to slip through and not have to pass a background check. And so it's just common sense to close those loopholes. That's not even a big deal. We already have the background check. We just need to make it apply to everyone.
Absolutely.
And another thing is red flag laws. So if someone is out there making threats, if someone is obviously having a breakdown and, having delusions and making threats about shooting up some kind of school or institution. Right now there's no mechanism to temporarily take their guns so they don't kill people. There's so many shootings of these mass shootings that happened where people saw it coming. And that's just a simple thing we can do to protect us from people who are, threatening others while still respecting the rights of those who have guns and use them in a law-abiding fashion.
Thank you. And Jeff, with a new background, a fancy piece of art behind him, same question to you. And I feel like as a veteran, you might have a different take. I don't know.
Well, and thank you for the compliment of the art. This was my little boy when he was 5. His paint job. So
that is a good dad right there. I love it.
It makes for a pretty good background. I think he's a pretty good artist.
He is.
I actually fully agree. I won't repeat everything back, but I think if you're looking for a quick way, kind of the most focused way for us to make a positive improvement, I have some very dear friends and business partners that are former chiefs of police, and this is what they talk about. They talk about these high risk protection, these red flag laws, so that we can prevent dangerous people from having access to guns and doing terrible things, and background checks. And that's the right way. And you referenced being a veteran. I was an expert marksman when I was in the military. I'm a gun owner. I know people who are responsible gun owners, and most of them understand that these are simple things that we can do that are right to protect our society. And so I think, the vast majority of Texans totally agree with that.
Yeah. I feel like we could have a conversation about all of these issues for hours and hours and hours. I love talking politics and bending the ear of these wonderful candidates. Again, please donate $17 at the very, very least, $20 for 2020, whatever it is that you want to do. Give them money, give them your time. You're hearing how well prepared they are to take control in the State House come next session. And so please, please, please help us get them elected. We have so many great candidates that are really going to work toward equality and justice for all of us. Again, watch the banner, make that donation, and then ask them your questions down in the comments. Okay, next question. I could ask you a million questions about this particular issues. So when we talk about education, we have a debate going on about charter schools. We have a debate about certification. We have a debate about the Robin Hood law. We have a debate about higher education funding. So I don't have time for all that, obviously. So in a minute, Jeff, tell me, how are you going to fix Texas education?
Oh, can I just take 30 seconds?
All right.
Well, the very first thing we've got to do at the state rep level, right? So as a state rep, we have to make sure that our state pays its share to schooling. Well, that's absolutely essential, because what happened in the last session was a Band-Aid fix. It was a temporary fix to allocate funds on a temporary basis. And now here we are in the midst of an economic downturn. We saw what happened when the Republicans were in control in 2011, an economic downturn. What did they slash and burn? Public education. When you elect a Democratic majority to the State House, we are going to be first and foremost fighting for public education. And I'll tell you, when I say public education, that doesn't include taking money and giving it to a business that runs a charter school and claims to be a public school. I'm talking about public education. And so that is critical. We have to give them the resources. And then we need to listen to the education experts. We got to listen to our teachers, listen to our administrators, and make sure that we're doing what's right. My wife is a teacher and has done that for many years, and I can tell you they are literally front line, and too often they are last to be listened to. That's not how we are. We're going to be listened.
That is absolutely true. So many candidates say that to me all the time, especially some of our candidates for school board. So that was a great answer. Dr. Lydia Bean, I feel like you might have a particular expertise here.
I agree with Jeff. I also come from a family of teachers. I'm a former teacher at the college level. My mom's a retired teacher. My 2 younger brothers are both teachers in Tarrant County in the public schools. And ultimately, building on what Jeff said, I think that quality education comes from great teachers, attracting and retaining great teachers. It comes from having great administrators who back up aforementioned teachers. It comes from good relationships between parents, students, teachers, and administrators working together for the best interest of the child. It comes from wraparound services that support kids who are coming from hard places to make sure they're ready to learn. Things like having a universal pre-K that set up all kids to be ready to learn by the time they get to kindergarten. Mm-hmm. That's what makes quality education. My job as a state legislator isn't to try to play God and pull strings from Austin and just, you know, hit public school teachers with sticks or whatever they imagined is going to create public education. My job is to get them the resources they need to do their job at the end of the day. And that's the most important thing we can do. We're going to need to watch out for efforts to use COVID-19 and the downturn as an excuse to cut public education, because don't be fooled. The only reason we got that influx of investment in public education in the last legislative session was because Republicans lost a lot of seats. And a lot of reps, including my opponent, suddenly discovered their newfound love for public education. And they shifted, my own opponent shifted from working for charters and vouchers and voting against every single budget, voted against pre-K, and then all of a sudden becomes a champion for public education. Do you really trust that? These are not folks who are doing the right thing because it's their heart to do so. They're just doing it. They're going to support public education only to the extent they get away with not doing so.
That's right.
So that's why we need to have a Democratic majority in the state house to fight those cuts. They're surely coming if we don't have real public education champions in the Texas House.
You heard it here from Jeff and Dr. Lydia Bean. We need to save education here in Texas, and we do that by electing these amazing candidates who are clearly well prepared to take action on day one to make sure that our students have access to quality education, public education. Everyone has a right to a good education. Make sure to donate $17. Ask your questions in the comments. Give your time, an hour a day, an hour a week, whatever you can commit to help get these wonderful candidates elected. Okay, next question. This is personal for me because I live in Houston, Texas. We have just had, with Hurricane Harvey, the most significant rain event in American history. Not only that, we have a billion hurricanes and tropical storms in the Gulf right now threatening our neighbors. So when Hurricane Harvey happened, our Governor Abbott, said, we have this Texas Rainy Day Fund, but we're not going to use it. So what is the Texas Rainy Day Fund for, if not for an actual rainy day? Dr. Lydia Bean, to you.
So the Rainy Day Fund, it's technically called the Economic Stabilization Fund, is one of the smartest things I think that Texas government ever did. And basically, a lot of our tax revenue comes from oil and gas. Everybody knows that the oil and gas industry, there's a lot of fluctuations, as we're seeing now. This was a hard year for those of us in the oil and gas industry. What that means is we kind of stock it away for a rainy day. So when we're flush with oil and gas money, we stock it away. And then when prices, collapse, as they do from time to time, or let's say, other countries dump cheap oil and gas on us or something unfair like that, we have this fund to draw on to kind of smooth things out. So we don't have this feast and famine, big budget increase, big budget collapse, cuts to public education. And so it's a really smart thing. And part of the problem, though, is if you save it for a rainy day, when the rainy day comes, you should probably spend it. That's what it's there for. So I think this, huge natural disaster, Hurricane Harvey, is a really important example. We should have spent from that, replenished it in good times, of course, because you can't just use it to solve all your budgetary problems. It's there to smooth things out. And then, of course, COVID-19, this pandemic, this is hopefully a once in a lifetime event, unless you're 120 years old and you lived through the last flu pandemic. It's a once in a lifetime event, and it's a great example of a rainy day. This kind of unforeseen event we couldn't possibly have planned or budgeted for this, and this is what the Economic Stabilization Fund is for events like these.
I appreciate that. Jeff Whitfield, to you.
Yeah, and I often think about we use the words rainy day fund, which really was applicable in Hurricane Harvey, right? In a big way.
The literal rainy day.
Yeah, and Economic Stabilization Fund. And frankly, it sort of reminds me of one of the things they taught me. I don't remember what class it was. It was like a family economics or learning how to balance my checkbook or something I took in junior high. And I remember one of the lessons they taught us was, why don't you set aside a little bit of money? So when you get older, as you start to get a job, put aside a little bit of money, because you never know when your car is going to break down. You're going to need a new tire, or when you get to be an adult in a family, when you have a medical crisis. There's some money you set aside for those moments that you don't expect. And I think the mere fact that we call it economic stabilization, I mean, if there's ever been a time in Texas history when our economy is unstable, it's right now. I mean, you literally have a collapse of the economy because of what COVID's done, as well as the poor leadership that has caused COVID to be amplified. Its damage has been just massively great, more destructive because of the lack of leadership. So you use the rainy day fund when your economy is unstable and when you need, as Lydia said, to balance that out, get us through this time, knowing that we will get the economy back again with new great leadership. And then we will put that money back into the Economic Stabilization Fund for the future rainy day.
I like both of your answers. Yes, and I always hope that you will tie it into the pandemic that we are all experiencing right now, where we do have so many people that are out of work, scared to go back to work, being forced to go to work, and uncertain times and situations. So I really appreciate that you are able to speak so eloquently about it. And I will say, add to those viewers that may be nationwide, the Texas Rainy Day Fund is pretty Texas specific. It is not something that happens in every state, but it happens in ours. And it's something that we're very concerned about here because there's just this influx of money that is not helping the less fortunate of all of us, which is all of us right now. Again, go to their websites, give them money, give them time, knock doors, make phone calls, something, do anything to help get these wonderful candidates elected November 3rd. Early voting begins October 13th across the state. So please, please, please make your plan to vote. It's 27 days, y'all. Wow. 27 days, 47 days until election day. So it's crunch time. We're very excited. Okay, this is, we'll do one or two more state questions, and then I'll open it up for y'all to give a minute about your districts. This is something that is specifically concerned. I want to come visit you, right? So I wish I could come visit you all the time and in a very quick fashion. And we have now hopefully the opportunity to have a light rail system here. So there has been talk about a light rail from Houston to Dallas, which would take the time that I have to drive up to Dallas to work, sometimes 5 hours at a time, down to an hour and a half. So would you support light rail? And just for those at home, the distance between DC and Houston is about the same as Dallas and Houston is about the same from New York to DC. So you see a lot of people take public transportation to get to and from those locations. We don't have that here in Texas. So would you support a light rail and perhaps an expansion beyond just Houston to Dallas? Jeff.
Well, I have a very special place in my heart for train transportation. I lived in England for a couple of years, Netherlands for a while, and it was all about the trains. I mean, we were trains and buses all over the place. And it works out really well there. And, I've been excited to see what's happened. We have a new train line running in Tarrant County between Central Fort Worth and DFW Airport with a number of stops along the way. And I'm excited people talking about the Texas Central Railroad that's going to go from Dallas to Houston, and Fort Worth has an interest in getting something over here. So I know that there's a lot of talk about this, and I think anything we can do to increase those public transit options are really important. But I also I also want to really, I haven't had a time to follow the studies or to see the expected ridership. I would want to make sure that, if there's something the state's doing, that it's something that all Texans are really supportive of. Because I think it would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Rail systems all over Texas would be fantastic.
It would be great. It would make getting to work for y'all a little bit easier, I think. Dr. Bean?
Yeah, I'm a little bit biased here. My husband and I own a small business called Recite Studio. It's our main office is actually in Houston. We live in Arlington, obviously, in House District 93. So we drive back and forth, and his parents live in Houston. So we have a lot of business interests in Houston. We have to go there and back a lot. Mm-hmm. So of course I would love it if we didn't have to drive, if we had a light rail, we could set up our laptop and, work while we go. That'd be a dream. As a state representative, I think I'd be inclined to support it, but I'd have to see the receipts though, because, sometimes in Texas you look, no bid contracts, all kinds of pork. I really want to make sure it was, what kind of incentives and public money is going into that. Land rights. There's a lot of stuff where I'd really have to uncover a few rocks and make sure it made sense and it was good stewardship of the public's resources.
I'm just impressed that both of you said I need to do some research. I feel like that is often lacking, in some of our representatives and some of our electeds. They come at it with a point of view and they stick to that without actually listening and researching for themselves. So I appreciate both of you having brains and wanting to do some research. That gives me a lot of confidence. One last question, and this also ties into the light rail. We are a state that's very dependent on oil and energy. We're the energy corridor here. A lot of our money, a lot of our tax money comes from that sector. However, we are rich in resources. Wind, solar. I mean, it's hot here all the time. It's very windy here all the time. So my question is, how would you propose we grow our alternative energy sector here in Texas? Jeff.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is it is so exciting to think about growing our alternative energy because the potential for jobs and new businesses is really quite phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So I think we should think not only about renewable energy for, the idea that it's just better for the environment, but I think we should think about it in growing our economy and creating new jobs. And I'll say that, Texas deserves high praise. We are one of the leaders in the country, I think, in terms of wind energy, and we're building out solar energy. And so I feel like in terms of what we at the state level could do is just be mindful that, many of the existing energy companies, those who, made their names in oil and gas, are some of the leaders and looking and creating new technologies for alternative energy. And I think we, at the state level, need to make sure that we're not getting in the way by overly regulating or policies that would get in the way of building out that renewable energy sector. So I'm excited about the future of energy in Texas, and I think it'll be good for all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Bean.
I want Texas to be a state that leads in all energy sectors. So renewables, moving into this sustainable energy future, I want to see Texas leading the way. So we have historical ties to oil and gas, and I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. But we also need, solar, wind, and that's not just, great for preparing us for a more sustainable future, but also it's a competitive advantage in attracting, Fortune 500 businesses to Texas. This is something a lot of people don't realize is a lot of Fortune 500 businesses looking into the future, looking at the reality, the real threats of climate change, are starting to really set some ambitious goals for themselves as corporations to be good corporate citizens and, to rely more on solar and wind and other renewable sources of energy. So the fact that we're so rich in sun and wind, and we're a leader in those industries is just one more way we can continue to attract good jobs to Texas.
Agree wholeheartedly. All right. So that's the hard part. Now comes the easy part. I'm going to give you each a minute to talk about your district, anything that we haven't covered that you think that our viewers might like to know or hear from you, or things that are concerning to you. I will bring you up for a minute, and then we'll bring you out when your minute's up, and then we will go to the audience portion of our lovely forum that we're having. We have a lot of questions. We hope we get to all of your questions. If we do not, we are encouraging our candidates to go see those comments and answer them directly yourselves by typing after we're done. So hopefully we'll get to all of them, but if we don't, we will encourage them to go answer your questions directly after we're done with our forum. And don't forget, $17 to our 17 most flippable Texas House seat candidates, and give them your time and a little bit of your expertise, and tell 5 friends to go vote for them. All right. Dr. Lydia Bean, 1 minute about your district.
Well, you can see my district behind me. Oh, right here. It's one of the most gerrymandered districts in the state of Texas, which is, quite an honor. It runs all the way through Tarrant County, and it's created to be unfair, to help Republicans win, but it's grown so quickly in the last 10 years, it's changed so much that now it's a purple district. And so that's partly because of growing racial diversity, and also from new people moving in from other states into Texas, new jobs, good public schools, new neighborhoods. And that's what's making this an opportunity district for Democrats. So it's really, District 93 is really representative of Texas as a whole. And as such, I like to say that if you want to flip the Texas House, you flip District 93, elect me, Lydia Bean, and we basically have everybody here at the table we need with us to build that new majority we need to govern Texas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bean. That was great. Jeff Whitfield, a minute about your district.
Thank you very much. As I said earlier tonight, I'm with House District 92. I'm your candidate here in Tarrant County. And let me just say, I think the people here in our House District don't want you just to know House District 92 by its incumbent. Jonathan Stickland, who has been the representative here for the last 8 years, is not an accurate reflection of the good-hearted, problem-solving people of this district. The fact he's been regularly rated one of the worst legislators in the state, and especially named a cockroach by Texas Monthly after the last session. We are a people that are focused on problem solving, focused on the most critical issues in the community, and we're just tired of that sort of divisive symbol being our representative down in Austin. So I'm honored to be able to fight this fight for Democrats, but also a lot of fair-minded independents and some people who used to consider themselves Republicans, and they're just ready for people who are going to go to Austin and work on the things that people all over Texas are worried about: our education system, access to health care, and rebuilding our economy after coronavirus. So come see us up here in the mid-cities of Tarrant County. You'll get a friendly greeting. I'm Jeff Whitfield for House District 92.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Okay, that's Jeff Whitfield for House District 92 and his neighbor, Dr. Lydia Bean, for House District 93. Make sure that you give $17 to every one of the candidates that are running in Texas. It's a hard thing to be a Democrat in Texas. At least it has been for the last 20 years or so. Please give them your time. Sign up to Phone Bank, sign up to Text Bank, sign up to write postcards or do lit drops. All of these things are ways that you can help these candidates get to the Texas State House come 2021. And we will be doing redistricting in 2021. So it's imperative that we get every Democrat elected that we can, so they will draw our districts in a way that is fair and balanced for all of us. Thank you. All right, we are going to move to the audience question portion of our program, and we have quite a lot. So I don't think we'll get to all of them, but we will try. I will try to give you 30 seconds to answer these. They'll be fairly quick. I know that some of the questions are a little bit more in depth, so we'll play it by ear, see how it goes. First question it has happened every single night, and it is clearly a concern across Texas. I'm interested in your stance on legalization of cannabis in Texas. Do you think that it will at least be legalized in 2021? Dr. Bean.
I don't know, but I think it's something we should look at seriously. I'm not someone who just thinks, if we just legalize pot, all of our problems will go away. I think we have to give it a serious look. There are definitely some road bumps that other states have encountered in trying to regulate marijuana like we do alcohol and tobacco. No drug. It's still a powerful drug, and there's a lot we still need to learn about how to make sure it's as safe as possible for the public and how to keep it out of the hands of kids and teenagers. But I think it's something we should give it a serious look, and I hope we can find a bipartisan consensus on both sides of the aisle for that. I think a lot of Republicans are starting to look at this, and it's something for me. It's an equity issue because the enforcement of marijuana laws is so often done in a racially and economically biased way. Right. So the kids who get the hammer down on them, it's not wealthy kids, it's poor kids, and it's kids who are Black or Hispanic in most cases who are ending up having their lives ruined because of having, a small amount of marijuana in possession. So I think what we need to do right away is, make sure we're not ruining young people's lives because of low-level marijuana possession. Start treating that more like a traffic ticket or a civil offense immediately, and then start looking at what other states are learning, what are some of the road bumps, how we can surmount some of those challenges. And I think if we see a way to deal with some of those challenges other states have had, I think it's something we should consider.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are talking about this because we want to be open to every new form of revenue for Texas, for our public schools, for our healthcare system, for our economic recovery. Okay. So what I'm really in support of is studying the positives and the negatives that other states have learned and seeing whether the people of Texas are ready for that.
Thank you very much, both of you. All right, our next audience question is, what is the best thing a volunteer can do for your campaign until the election? Jeff.
I tell you, we would love to have you on our phone banks. It's a lot of fun. You're calling a lot of Democrats in the mid-cities who are ready for change, and they love talking to you because they're excited. We've got so many great Democratic candidates this year. We have phone banks once a week. We're about to kick that up to 3 or 4 times a week. And if you want to join in, we have one coming up with Powered by the People on October 1st. And we can knock through a bunch. So love to have you phone banking with us.
Great. Dr. Bean.
Yeah, I agree. It's phone banking, because even though we can't get out there and knock doors, there's nothing magic about, hitting someone's door with your hand that makes them vote. It's about the conversation, and we can have those conversations over the phone. And we find people, because they're stuck at home with COVID, they're actually kind of glad to talk to you. Mm-hmm. And, my district, as well as Jeff's district, my district is 12 points ahead for Biden. So you don't have to argue with a bunch of folks who hate us. All you got to do is talk to folks who are already going to vote for Biden and make sure they vote for me, Lydia Bean, as well, and they vote for other Democrats from start to finish. So you're talking to friendly people who want to hear from you and are actually glad to get some company because we're all cooped up at home. So go to my Mobilize link, mobilize.us/Lydia Bean, and sign up for one of our phone banks coming up.
I love a candidate that knows where to tell people where to go to sign up for a shift. Okay, next question. How would you address the human trafficking problem? That's a big one. Dr. Bean.
Whew, that's a big one. I think prosecutors are going to have a lot to do with it. I think a lot of this comes down to the nuts and bolts of compassionate policing and compassionate prosecutors who know the difference between human trafficking and voluntary, sex work, and who can work to, really be committed to serving some of the most vulnerable people. And I think that is where a lot of the progress is going to come from. Of course, as a state legislator, I'm going to try to pass laws that make it easier to uncover human trafficking. But ultimately, it also comes down to training and to the values in our police departments and in our district attorney's office that can make the biggest difference, I think.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, we have to make sure that our first responders, our law enforcement officers, and at the federal level, our FBI, our border agents, people that have the ability to really be finding human traffickers, shutting them down, and then our prosecutors and our courts have the laws in place to be able to prosecute them and put them away. So I think, we just need to make sure that our system is robust and there's communication between all of those different branches, and that the job gets done, because it's a real terrible thing, and it's far too common in our state. It has to be everything we can to protect those most vulnerable.
Thank you both. Okay, this next question comes from Elizabeth Hernandez, who's running for Congress, actually. So you have a fellow candidate watching you right now and asking questions.
Hi,
When
Elizabeth.
I say you never know who's watching, I mean it. So Elizabeth Hernandez asks, what ideas do you have to improve education for children with special needs? And we'll start with you.
Who was that got the question first?
Jeff, you.
I'm sorry, the signal broke up a little bit. Yeah, I'll tell you that our public school systems are under-resourced in a lot of ways, and very specifically are under-resourced in caring for our special needs populations. And so, I mean, I know that from the special needs educators and professionals that I've talked to, they are doing a phenomenal job in our public schools trying to provide care for the kids that have special needs. But there's not enough of them. That we don't have enough. They don't have the co-teachers or the classroom assistants they need. And so what I will do is listen to those that are out there on the front line and find out, what do you need? Do you just need more resources? Do we need a classroom assistant in every class? How do we make sure that our public schools can provide, exactly what our special needs children need?
Thank you. Dr. Bean.
Yeah, this is something dear to my heart. My younger brother is a special ed teacher. He's kind of his secret talent. He uncovered it as a young man. We had no idea. He is extremely patient and loving, but not with me. Why isn't he patient to his own sister? Just to his kids. He loves his kids. And then my mother is also was a special ed counselor. And I think it's important, as Jeff said, to listen to teachers and what would help them. Just from listening to the teachers in my family, I think class size is a big one. Having skilled paraprofessionals who are paid a family-sustaining wage, so we can attract and train and retain good paraprofessionals, can really help provide that hands-on attention that kids need to thrive. And then also, as a state legislator, I want to be mindful to help by getting resources that are actually helpful to schools that serve these kids, rather than just adding more paperwork. I think one thing I've noticed is my brother and my mom, when she was working in this field, did so much paperwork. It was like they spent half their job just documenting the things that special ed kids need, which is good. You do have to have those standards and protections,
right?
But really what those kids need is not more paperwork being filled out about them that they'll never read. They need more hands-on attention and teacher time and small class sizes in a hospital environment that's helping them to work their education plan. So that's what really makes a difference, and not just sort of creating these rules and paperwork that just create more work for teachers that don't help kids.
I don't think I even knew that, and that makes total sense to me. You want a more hands-on experience when you're dealing with challenges for any teacher, I would imagine. I think maybe digitizing a lot of what we do would help a lot of our professionals across every industry, really. Okay, our next question is, tell us your thoughts on the flippability of the seats in Tarrant County. Dr. Bean.
Yeah, we have 5 seats just in Tarrant County that are flippable, and maybe a few more if we get lucky. But these are seats, honestly, we could have flipped in 2018 if Texans we just believed in ourselves. I believed that my district was flippable in 2016 and 2018. That's why I encouraged my mom, Nancy Bean, to run at that time. And we really showed what was there. And so how much more are they going to be flippable now that we actually have this investment from Democrats all over the state who are calling in and texting into our district and sending your money to help us out. And we have so fantastic candidates. I'm really proud of all of we call ourselves the Tarrant County 5. I think it just really, I think we represent the Democratic Party well, and also some of the other folks running in the area. All, even if they have a harder road to hoe, each of them excellent, showing that we're ready to govern. As I mentioned, Joe Biden, with our polling, is actually up 12 points in District 93. I'm up 2 to 3 points with them, just knowing that I'm a Democrat and a little bit about me. And so now that we're out there, sending folks mail and calling people and texting people, you can help us make the difference and maybe run up that even more to make sure that we win. Because if we lose these seats in Tarrant County, it won't be because people wanted the Republican to win. It's because they voted for Biden and they didn't keep going all the way to the end.
That's right.
And so don't wake up on November 4th with those regrets. So sign up for our phone banks today and make sure that our Biden voters are voting Democrat from start to finish.
That's right. That's right. Start to finish, up and down the ballot. Jeff.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that is dead on. And I can tell you here in House District 92, you look at the last several cycles, you can watch that Republican margin just keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking down to the point where in the last election, the Republican only won this seat by 1,000 votes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in a midterm, and there was nowhere close to the passion here. So I am confident that the Democrats are going to be coming out. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of independents who are ready for change. And there's a lot of former Republican voters who are ready for change. So I look forward to us doing the hard work. And Lydia said it. None of us want to wake up on November 4th thinking, oh my gosh, we could have done this more.
That's right.
There's a lot here. We're going to call until you learn our names and go start to finish on the ballot.
And across Texas, we have some of the longest ballots. We really do. They're very, very long. So just look for the Democrat next to the name, mark those ballots up and down, start to finish, because this is not just about Joe Biden. These are candidates that will affect our everyday life. Every day that we live in the state of Texas is controlled by our legislature. These amazing people can help make sure that we all have equal representation across our state, that we all have access to a good education, that we all have access to healthcare. So please make sure to donate to Lydia Bean for 93, Jeff Whitfield for 92. Donate $17. Give an hour of your time. Text. I've been texting all day for our women's outreach for my Democratic Women's Club. It is easy. It's not hard to do these phone banks. I know some people feel a little trepidatious about doing phone calls because nobody talks to anybody anymore. We all text. It is not. It is a really great way to connect with your neighbors. Our neighbors are spread out across the state. We're a big state. So make sure to make those phone calls. You would be surprised at how easy and wonderful it is to talk to other Democrats and talk them into voting for the candidate that you're working for at the time, which is Dr. Bean and Jeff. All right. We have a couple more questions. This one is from YouTube. How can you ensure kids will grow up well here in Texas when we rank at the bottom of education and nearly everything else that a child would need to grow to be healthy? Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the reason that we are running, because we are Texans. We can do so much better than this. We can't be on the bottom of some list. That's unacceptable. And what we're going to do is we're going to get in there and we're going to fight for the things that we need. We're going to fight for access to health care so that we don't have children who are uninsured and their families unable to get them care. We're going to fight for a public education system that provides for them. We're going to fight to make sure that our counties don't have the highest levels of maternal mortality and infant mortality in the country. But we have to fight this fight because it's who we are. I mean, Texans we're not going to stand for this. And that's why you're going to see a extraordinary change this year. And I just want to say at the end of this comment, my campaign manager is telling me that those donations are coming. So thank y'all so much. Fantastic.
That's exactly what I want to hear. That makes me so happy. Dr. Bean, question to you. Same.
I would add that we're so close to being able to we want to really good quality education, that's fully funded. As Jeff said, we're not a poor state, We are a wealthy state, so we have the resources we need to fund public education and make it, have the schools that are the envy of the rest of the country. We could do it. We could do it within years. And it's not that Texans don't value public education. It's not that we aren't compassionate. We are an extremely compassionate people, and we value public education. And that's why we're seeing this fast shift, because really what's happened is, as Mike Collier said, is that the maps were drawn in Texas so that the state legislature wouldn't represent the people of Texas. So what we've been seeing in Austin, some of the craziness we see, some of the shenanigans, some of the malarkey, as our Vice President Joe Biden would put it, is because they drew the map so that they would be free to not be held accountable by voters. So that we had a government that didn't represent what Texans wanted. So now we have the chance to actually get a government that does represent what Texans have always wanted and want more than ever. And that's really what we're going to give to them this fall in 2020.
You see, Dr. Bean has behind her district on a map. And much like a district down here in the Houston area, Dan Crenshaw is running against our own Seema Lajavarian. And their district literally looks like a horseshoe above the entire Houston metropolitan area. And it's crazy to me to see those districts that are so just pieced out, and they don't have anything to do with each other. And we know as Texans that we are a vastly different state depending on what city you're in. I mean, everybody has their own point of view. So I really appreciate y'all talking about gerrymandering. It's a really important issue, and it is what is on the ballot. Biggest thing on the ballot this year is redistricting for us Texans. Okay, we have a few more questions, but we don't have a whole lot of time, so we're going to try to speed this up a little bit. What's the first piece of legislation you would want to write, Dr. Bean?
Well, effectively, the first piece of education legislation we're going to have to work on is the budget. But I think expanding Medicaid, that's the most important thing to me as far as my own heart, my own struggles that I've seen in my family.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'm going to be right there with Lydia on expanding Medicaid. And also, if she beats me to that one, then I might be right in there running into the public education. We've got to make sure we got a permanent fix to public education funding. And then we address these issues that our educators are most worried about.
And that's what the budget's going to be. It's going to be education, healthcare. That's going to be the two fights we're going to have right out of the gate is drawing up that budget.
Well, and another issue we're dealing with, and this comes from the questions, is access, and you both are dealing with it today, to high-speed internet that is reliable. So how would you propose, Jeff, to make access to Wi-Fi across our state easier for all of our Texans here?
I know that one of the things that COVID has caused is sort of this explosive provision of hotspots through our public school system. So I'd be interested to study that. I mean, I heard a report from Texas Education Agency suggesting that hotspots now are available, vastly through the system. I also heard a report the other day that Elon Musk of Tesla fame envisions a series of satellites where the whole world has internet. I mean, I would want to understand what both is happening in the public and the private sector, and if there's places that we can engage at the state level. I just think the future is going to be exciting with access to high-speed, consistent internet.
Thank you. Dr. Bean?
My grandfather we used to describe outhouses as Republican toilets, because Republicans opposed rural electrification. So they didn't think, because it wasn't profitable to have water and running water and electricity in some of the poor rural areas. Well, they didn't need water and they didn't need electricity. I mean, those old-fashioned kerosene lamps, used to call those Republican lamps, right? And I think today that what's the equivalent is that today it's high-speed internet. It's something that it's not a luxury. Kids need it to learn, and that's why I've seen pictures of kids just kind of squatting outside of a school building, trying to access the Wi-Fi so they can participate in school. You have kids, you have school districts that are hustling to get hotspots out to kids who don't have high-speed internet and can't participate in virtual education. And that just demonstrates that it's part of the infrastructure that helps people participate and access opportunity. And that means that, we need to do more to make sure that people have access to affordable Wi-Fi. And, and there's a lot we can do to also make cable more affordable. I mean, for those of us who have the means to buy internet, we're also paying too much for it. And there's a lot we can do as far as making sure that market is free and fair and not, full of monopolies. So we actually pay, a fair price and we don't get gouged for our internet that we need to live and work.
Thank you both very much for your answers. Okay. We have so many questions. There's no way we're going to get to them all. So you really have to go to all the comments on all the platforms and go look at your constituents and your voters and answer them after we're done. We only have roughly 10 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. One is, what do you propose to make voting easier in Texas? And Dr. Lydia Bean, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, as this COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated, I really think, especially in this pandemic, everyone should be eligible to apply to vote by mail. There's just no reason. There's nothing magic that happens when you turn 65 that makes you. I mean, my parents are 65 and they're perfectly healthy and healthier than a lot of people my age. Actually, they're healthier than me. My dad's in better shape than I am, and so there's nothing magic about the age 65 that means you need to vote for mail. I think other people should be able to apply for it. And we all have a disability. That is, we are not immune to a life-threatening virus that could have lifelong health effects. So I think we should allow people to vote by mail. You shouldn't have to take your life into your hands to vote. That said, please get out there and vote. And unfortunately, we have extra weeks of early voting so we can space it out and get out there, wear a mask, and vote safely.
That's right.
And we should also be able to register to vote online. There's just no reason not to do that. When you go and you renew your voter registration online, there was a lawsuit because what happens is you could check a box that said, I'd like to register to vote online. I'd like to renew my voter registration, or I'd like to register to vote. When you check that box, it went out to a black hole and nothing happened. And then you'd show up at the polling location and they'd say you weren't registered to vote. That's just criminal. That's just criminal. So we have to make it actually possible in the 21st century to register to vote online. And I think there are a lot of things we can do, like same-day voter registration. Record keeping is a lot easier than it was in the mid-20th century when a lot of these systems got set up. It's a lot easier for us to do instant voter registration. And I think we need to make it easier to vote, not harder. We need to make sure that voting is something that serves all Texans. And, these rules that are being created, a lot of them are created to keep people of color from voting. That's and right. to protect elected officials from being held accountable by their own voters. And I think it needs to be the other way around. I think we need to make it as accessible to vote as possible. It needs to voting that's representative and inclusive for everyone.
I'm with you on that. On a time when our tollways, they're not taking our money. They're just like, go through and then we'll bill you later, or you can pay online. Well, I want to be able to register to vote online. It should be automatic registration. It is our fundamental constitutional right to vote. That is all of us. So I agree with you. Jeff, same question to you.
Yeah, and I would say not only is it our constitutional right, it's our constitutional responsibility. So when there are these government actors who are obstructing our ability to exercise that responsibility, and then they wrap themselves in the flag and they claim that they're such great champions of the Constitution. Come on, if anybody's trying to suppress the vote, are they really as patriotic as they pretend to be? I'm open to just about anything that would expand the access to vote, make it easier for people to do it. The evidence shows that this voter fraud allegations, that it's just smoke and mirrors, that very little voter fraud happens, and that there's ways to make sure that people can vote and they don't engage in fraud. So all the things Lydia talked about, from same-day voter registration to vote by mail, all kinds of concepts. I'm open to exploring all of those.
I love that. Okay. I'm trying to choose one more question to ask you guys before we move on to our final closing statements from our two wonderful candidates. And there are so many fantastic questions. The last one that has come in, the pandemic has really highlighted inequalities across the United States. What would you propose as a safety net for us here in Texas? Jeff, we'll start with you.
A safety net that we've learned from the coronavirus. Well, I guess my mind goes to a few different things. One is we have to make sure that our public health system is robust. A couple of sessions ago, the Republicans who were in control had the opportunity to prepare for this very crisis, and they failed miserably in what they should have shown leadership in. So we would not be suffering as terribly as a state, as a nation, if people had planned ahead and had taken us one. So we have to, really strengthen our public health system. Two is we need to be mindful that we at the state are doing everything we can to allow the economy to grow back. Focus our energy on helping small and mid-sized businesses grow their businesses, create the jobs that are going to get people back out there. We have to have a public education system that can take those kids and educate them, allow parents to go and get to work. Those are just and a healthcare system. So I talked about public health, but a healthcare system where folks feel like they have that net, they can get that care that they need. They could get the vaccinations that are so critical, even though some of us have opponents that are against vaccinations. The science is very clear that vaccination is critical. So those are a few things that come to mind.
And Dr. Bean?
I would also add there are a lot of policy fixes we can make now to prepare us for the future pandemics or future health emergencies. Jeff mentioned, we had an opportunity after the Ebola outbreak in Texas to shore up our public health infrastructure to prepare for a future health threat, that ended up being COVID-19. And it got, tangled up in a bunch of extreme ideology and conspiracy theories. And that's, as a result, you see, thousands of Texans dying because of extremism. Folks who just don't, weren't willing to be grown-ups and do what it takes to govern the state of Texas and look out for everyone's health. So we need to fix that. And then there are a lot of things that we can do, including expanding Medicaid to make sure everyone has a medical home. Everyone has a primary care doctor. They know if they need to get tested for COVID-19 or a future threat, they know where to do so. They have a doctor they can call if they start coughing and they don't know what to do. And another thing we can do is pass paid sick days in Texas to get everyone access to paid sick days at work so everyone can earn paid sick time. I helped pass paid sick time in 3 of the Texas's largest cities at the city level. And, one of the reasons we did it was because cities that require paid sick time have fewer deaths during flu outbreaks than cities that don't require paid sick time. Now, flu, despite what you may have heard, flu is not nearly as deadly as COVID-19. COVID-19 is a completely different thing, so don't play around with it, folks. But you imagine paid sick time is a public health measure that helps make sure people stay home when they get sick and they can afford to do so. And until we have everyone has the right to earn paid sick days at work, you're going to continue to have this culture we have in Texas of working sick. It's just the culture we have, especially in the service industry. If you're coughing, you have a fever, you call your manager and you say, I need to stay home. Well, you might lose your job. Even if your manager's understanding, you might not be able to afford to take sick time. So you end up going to work, you get other people sick. You're doing what you can to keep the lights on, but it hurts everyone. So we need those kinds of things to prepare ourselves to create a culture of public health.
Well, we are out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Jeff Whitfield for House District 92, Dr. Lydia Bean for House District 93. I'm going to give them each 1 minute for a closing statement. Do not forget, please donate at least $17 and at least an hour of your time a week. There are only 4 weeks until we start early voting here in Texas on October 13th and 47 days until Election Day, November 3rd. Please make sure to donate to our candidates. And thank you both for joining us this evening. We will start with Jeff for House District 92 with a 1 minute closing.
thank y'all so much for allowing me to come and speak with you guys about what's happening here in House District 92 of Tarrant County. I am Jeff Whitfield. I'm your Democratic candidate here. And I just want to say to you, I know that you may be watching from the area, you may be watching from somewhere else, but we are all together in this fight to make sure that our communities get the kind of representation they need. And it's been an honor of my life to have served my country in uniform, to have helped prosecute war criminals at the United Nations, to be a volunteer here in my community. And it will be an honor for me to represent my neighbors, the people who inspired me into a life of service as a kid, to now represent them in the legislature. So visit our website, whitfieldfortexas.com. Click to get our emails, to learn more about the campaign. Follow us on Facebook, Jeff Whitfield for Texas House District 92. Follow us on Twitter. Find a way to engage, and I will look forward to seeing you on one or more of our future phone banks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And 1 minute to Dr. Lydia Bean for House District 93.
Thanks for watching tonight. Please get out and vote Democrat from start to finish, but don't just do that. Please volunteer. I hope you'll volunteer for my campaign. We have 3 phone banks coming up just this week. So go to mobilize.us/Lydia Bean. That's LYDIA, B as in boy, EAN, and sign up for one of those phone banks. We have a once in a lifetime chance to decide what we want to be as the state of Texas. And we can come together, Democrats, independents, and Republicans who share our values. We can elect a new majority in the Texas House. We can get quality public education. We can expand Medicaid. We can get fair maps that equitably represent all Texans. And we can also make sure we get Trump out of office by delivering Texas's votes to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So please volunteer and donate what you can to my campaign at lydiabeanfortexas.com/donate. I really want your support, and tell your friends in Tarrant County to get out and vote all the way through, because this is Tarrant County. If we can flip these 5 House seats, we can flip the Texas House, which means we could also turn Texas blue and achieve all these amazing things for our state, and also help save American democracy in the process. So this is probably the single best thing you can do, is I would say, to help us flip these 5 House seats in Tarrant County, because really everything we're doing in the whole country, it's going to come down to Tarrant County.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lydia Bean for House District 93, Jeff Whitfield for House District 92. You are wonderful representations of Democrats across Texas. I appreciate you so much. I have a personal connection in Tarrant County. I work there. I have family up there. So I will certainly be getting the word out. Please make sure to donate and follow Blue Outpost TX on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of the social channels, and make sure you donate to these wonderful candidates. Again, thank you both so much for taking your time tonight, and we will see you next Thursday at the same time, at this same bat channel, for another amazing forum. Thank you so much.